I finished my attempt at the Edmonton Marathon today. Ouch. Self-sabotage issues and all that out of the way, I did manage to finish. So that's something. I don't recommend doing it that way. I mean, if you're going to do a marathon, you should probably train for it. If you're going to do any sporting event, you should probably train for it. I don't necessarily think there's an advantage to not training properly for, well, anything really. Because jumping into this marathon cold means that I'm a hot mess right now. I don't feel great right this moment. Nor should I. I just ran a marathon with no training. And that's in stark contrast to how I felt after I ran the Calgary Ultra Marathon, which technically speaking is 8 kilometers longer. But I felt amazing after that ultra. The big difference was that I actually trained for that and I didn't train for this. That might be a clue. Training is everything, folks. It really is. You can't mindset your way through an ultra endurance event. And it's not like I don't train. I do train. I train all the time. I just wasn't training specifically for marathons. And specificity matters. Now, you're not having deja vu. I did this exact same thing when I did my mountain bike race at the end of July. This is the first time I've really jumped into 2 long distance endurance events with minimal or incorrect training. Basically, I just felt so good in my regular training that I thought I could get away with leveraging my fitness from that training into these events. I survived the mountain bike race and it didn't feel great, but I survived. The marathon is a bit of a different animal. I even set goals for today's race. 5 to be exact. The first one was get to the starting line. That was just kind of a bare minimum. It's low-hanging fruit, I admit it, but not a lot of people make it to the starting lines in some of these instances. They kind of let fear take over their decision-making process and they end up not even starting. They get a DNS. That's not going to happen with me if I can help it. My second goal was to make it to the finish line, actually complete the marathon. That seemed reasonable enough when I said it, but somewhere between about 30 and 42 kilometers today, it got less and less reasonable. But if you watched one of my other videos where I was talking about goal setting, I set some audacious goals for this particular marathon. The first was that I wanted to set a PB in the half marathon, the first half of the marathon. I wanted to run that out and see if I could get myself a PB in the first half. Yeah, I was short 58 seconds on achieving that goal. The other goal I had was to try and set a PB or match my first PB in the second half of the marathon, which would be a second half marathon performed back to back essentially. That was particularly audacious because I knew that I was going to have to really push myself to get the PB in the first half, and trying to match that or better it in some sort of positive split really wasn't all that likely. But who knows? Maybe on race day, something magical happens. It didn't. Nothing magical happened. But if I'd have achieved those 2 goals, what would have been interesting is it would have put me within striking distance of a Boston qualifying time. As to the Boston qualifying time, well, no. Because the first half of the marathon wasn't as speedy as I needed it to be. The second half was an absolutely punishing and grueling affair that saw me slow down tremendously. And by the time I got to the end of the marathon, I was nowhere near where I needed to be to get a Boston qualifier. That was kind of an outrageous sort of goal as far as what I was trying to achieve with this marathon anyway. But still, I thought I would get at least reasonably close to that target within about 20 minutes or so. No, that didn't happen. For those of you keeping score at home, which would be weird because I don't know why you'd be keeping score on something that happened to me. Anyway, if you're keeping score at home, I achieved goal 1 and 2. Basically, I made it to the start line and I finished the marathon. So I can put check marks next to those. Goals 3 through 5, setting a PB half marathon in the first half, a PB half marathon in the second half and getting my Boston qualifying time, no, those didn't happen. My average isn't great. I started, I finished, that's about it. It's a thing that happened. And despite achieving goals 1 and 2, it was really goals 3, 4, and 5 that I wanted to achieve. I was a lifetime away from achieving any of those goals, though. Or more precisely, I was a training cycle away from achieving those goals. I think if I'd have trained properly for this event, I'd have probably done a lot better. I mean, even just saying that out loud sounds stupid, because if I'd have trained for this event, of course I would have done a lot better. So, what did we learn? Nothing, really. That's the funny part about all this. We already knew that attempting a marathon without any training was sort of a silly thing to do. It's still silly. I mean, I guess we could say that I confirmed it. I already knew it was not a good idea, and today definitely confirmed that it's not a good idea. I don't know that I was looking for confirmation on that, but I have it. What else did we learn, though? We learned a little bit more about goal setting. You should keep them realistic. Basically, don't set silly goals, especially if you're not training properly. That's good advice right there. Because not training properly and then compounding the entire challenge by setting unrealistic goals, yeah, don't do that. And I knew that already. I did. So today was an exercise in learning lessons that we already knew, or more specifically, that I already knew. The irony there being that when I coach or train other athletes, I refer to those lessons all the time. You need to train and you need to keep your goal setting realistic. I guess today I just learned those lessons specifically for me. So that's a thing. Or maybe more like a dumpster fire or a burning tire yard. Basically nothing good.